Coronavirus containment efforts will take a toll on China's economy and via domino effect the global economy. Some are asking, has globalization gone too far? And a U.S. senator has been spreading fringe theory about the Chinese government manufactured the coronavirus. What are the dangers of such disinformation? Welcome to The Point, an opinion show coming to you live from Beijing. I'm Li Xin. China is gradually finding its way back to work amid concerns surrounding coronavirus containment. But given the measures taken to curb the spread of the virus, the world's second-largest economy has yet to kick into full gear, and the economic impact is already taking a toll. Predictions for China's first quarter GDP now range from 0% to around 5.5%, down from the 5.9% current annual projected growth rate. But in a globalized world, the impact is being felt far beyond China's borders. So what's at play? Is globalization to blame? I'm joined by Shi Lyu, Associate Professor in the Department of Public Health Sciences of Clemson University in South Carolina, and here in Shanghai via Skype by Chen Jiahe, Chief Investment Officer at Novem Arcae Technologies, a family wealth management office that mainly invests in multiple assets in China. Gentlemen, welcome to The Point. So many countries...
Good evening.
Good evening. Many countries are feeling a real weight on their economy because of China, let's say, calling in sick, and the world seems to be slowing down. So, Professor Shi Lyu, let me go to you first. How do you look at the close link between the Chinese economy and the world economy that has been revealed through this epidemic so far?
Well, definitely this is very the connection between China and the rest of the world supply chain is very tight, and now increasingly because everybody is using this lean management, just-in-time delivery, the supply chain is more vulnerable to this kind of disruption than 20 years before. So. Yeah, this does reveal the close connection between China's supply chain and the global economy. And unless there's immediate revision of this kind of a lockdown policy, the world's going to feel it more severely than what is currently being felt now. I have just been joined by Mr. Max Wolff, who is founding partner of Multivariate Solutions, a financial consulting company. So welcome, Mr. Wolff, as usual. As I was saying, now is also the time when people are feeling the pinch when the Chinese supply chain, when the Chinese part of the supply chain is being interrupted. People are shunning Chinese businesses, of course, not for the same reason, but if you look around, a lot of products made in China, and then you have the absence of Chinese tourists, you have the absence of Chinese buyers not snatching up luxury brands, and then even the absence of Chinese students. Basically, we're sort of seeing a world without China, which has been something, some kind of a secret wish of some people for a while. And the U.S. has been talking about decoupling. So, Max, let me go to you because you're in the United States. Is this something which could give us an idea of what the world could be like if there's really a decoupling between China's economy and the world's economy?
Well, great to be here. Always a pleasure. Thank you for having me. I would say this is not anywhere near as severe or tragic as it would be a world without China. This is a world with a little bit less China, which has already been a darker world in terms of economic opportunity. And as we had discussed in the past, actually, and I had feared, the most dangerous thing about this outbreak is the various ways people deal with it. And probably the most dangerous element in the global economy right now is a small-minded 19th century sort of nationalistic view of our economy, which is a 21st century machine. And in this 21st century machine, China is very much an internal organ without which life ends. And so when you see the engine of global growth and the second largest economy in the world slow down, it immediately has effects, and then more gradually it has larger effects. And we see that now. And I think we see that those governments, those policies, and those people who blame China or try to marginalize China or pursue some other non-economic agenda with this as an excuse are acting in an immoral and inefficient manner that hurts us all.
So, Mr. Chen, here in Shanghai, it is true that a lot of global companies are very much dependent on China, especially in the more stricken areas in China by this virus. For instance, there is this survey which analyzed that at least 50,000 companies worldwide have one or more direct or tier 1 suppliers in the impacted region, whereas at least 5 million have one or more tier 2 suppliers. So, given this circumstance, and I don't want to exaggerate, the kind of impact that dependence on China could have on the world economy, but are we seeing dependence on China an asset or liability for many of these foreign companies?
Well, it's definitely an asset that's much larger than the liability that is caused because of this coronavirus. I mean, look at how much China has brought the products, the consumption, everything, the linkage between China and the rest of the world. China is what we call it the world's factory today. But within just 20 years' time, it's only about 1 month stopping of the Chinese economy. So that's only a very small liability if you look at that. The time the economic impact started to be effective on Chinese economy since the 20th of January, and now it's 18th of February. It's only 1 month and maybe 1 month more. So that's 2 months. That's a maximum period that the world economy will be influenced because of the coronavirus. But you have gained quite so much from it.
U.S. Secretary of State, U.S. Secretary of Commerce Wilbur Ross said weeks earlier that the virus could prompt companies to reconsider their global supply chains and ultimately help to accelerate the return of jobs to the United States. Professor Shi Lyu, do you agree? Do you think this could happen, or this could be on the mind of some people who have been thinking of diversifying supply chains from China?
Well, right now, I can only speak for what I see here in the United States. Right now, people in the U.S. are not quite feeling it, and the U.S. stock market is not being so much affected. I mean, there are some cancellation, and there are some quarterly, expected revenue going down of some major companies. Yes, but overall, the impact as felt here by the U.S. businessman or the general public is still at the minimal level. But there is a condition. If the cities outside Hubei continues with this kind of a lockdown policy, then the impact will be fairly big. And really, that's the moment when people start to think to diversify the investments and invest somewhere else, not necessarily come back to the U.S. though.
At this
I
moment,
have to point out, though, this kind of backsourcing, the jobs return started 10 years ago, way before Trump's time, so it's not something new.
So, Mr. Wolff, I want to get your insight on the same story. Although we know in China, a lot of cities are trying their best to balance containing the virus with restarting the economic engine after the traditional spring festival holiday. But if the current situation persists, do you think countries will reconsider being less dependent on China in the future, or this is only a short-term hiccup?
Yeah, so that depends a little bit on the course of the outbreak, but I think that in any of the reasonable estimates I've seen anyway, which make this 1 month in, with another, say, as little as 1 month or as much as 3 or 4 more months maximum, I think that's a strange analytic about business. I think supply decisions are not made lightly. They require enormous lead time, and there is nothing about this disease or this type of outbreak that we don't expect to occur all over the world with increasing frequency in an age of climate change. So the fact that it was Wuhan this time means nothing. It doesn't mean that it won't be somewhere else next time. So you'll simply be running out of the burning building hours after the fire ended for no particular reason. That's a wish list policy that Wilbur Ross has shared before, and he's apparently worked on it to absolutely no success for many years, the kernel of which is even if the production came back to the United States, the jobs wouldn't, because we're not going to return to a 1970s production in a global economy that's competitive in the U.S. or anywhere else.
There are people who are criticizing, using this opportunity to criticize globalization, saying, look, simply because of globalization, when something happens in a place far away, you know, people or family or businesses in another place in the world are getting affected. And some people are, you know, trumping this kind of, or blaming globalization using this circumstance. Max, I want to get your feedback on that.
Look, when you're in a family and the family helps you and supports you, it's wonderful. And sometimes someone in the family catches a cold at work and they come home and they share it with their family. And in that moment, sure, you're unhappy, but being alone in the world is hardly a better option. I think the economy is very similar to that.
Finally, this epidemic has also affected China's international cooperation with other countries. For instance, the Belt and Road Initiative that China has been promoting with partners around the world. And for instance, the construction of a $2.5 billion power plant in Bangladesh, a joint project between China and Bangladesh under the Belt and Road Initiative, is facing delays as Chinese workers are not able to go back to Bangladesh after the Lunar New Year holiday. So, Mr. Chen, how do you look at the impact of such delays on China's international cooperation projects so far?
Well, there is definitely some impact. As you just said, 3,000 workers can't really return to the place. I mean, this is such a huge event. You can't expect it to have no impact to these projects that are conducted by China's companies. But these impact will be very short-term. If you look at the discovered pensions outside of the Hubei province, that has been dropping for 14 consecutive days. So that is actually getting away. The workers will be able to go back to their factories and fields very soon. And if you think about the Hubei province, it's not that big a problem. Hubei province only counts for less than 5% of China's GDP, while China's GDP currently is growing at 6% every year. So things will be sorted out.
Okay, we have to leave it there. Many thanks to my guests, Shi Lyu, Associate Professor in the Department of Public Health Sciences at Clemson University, Max Wolff, Founding Partner at Multivariate Solutions, and Chen Jiahe, Chief Investment Officer at Novem Arcae Technologies.